Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Let's begin. 126 Chapter 1. It was appropriate, he thought, that it would rain on the day of a funeral. Gloomy overcast, with fine mist coming down on him and a bored-looking gravedigger. They were the only ones left from a lackluster funeral. Only 3 other people had shown up, their principal, and her sister and grandmother. Those 3 along with him were the only ones who seemed to care. Hey kid, the gravedigger said, giving the boy a pitying look, it's been 3 hours since the service ended, I gotta get to work. Yeah, I get it. Izuku mumbled as he took a step back, sparing the grave one last look before he walked away. His feet brought him back to his apartment, soaking wet and shivering slightly as he opened the door and stepped inside to be greeted by silence. His mother was probably at her second job, he wouldn't see her for a few more hours at the very least. With a sigh, Izuku kicked off his shoes and peeled off his wet clothes, depositing them in the washroom before stepping into the shower. Within a few moments he was showered and dressed for bed, hesitating at the door, before finally pushing it open. Some of his hero memorabilia smiled at him from the many cardboard boxes he had been packing them up in when he had gotten the news. He walked between the boxes, eyes trailing over to a set of pictures on one of his shelves. Depicting him and a brown-haired girl with soft green eyes, their poses varied. In some they were laughing as they ran, in others they were hanging off of each other, drenched in sweat but with lively eyes and huge grins. And in one, she was pressing a kiss into his cheek, leaving him blushing mid-act. With a sigh, Izuku fell back onto his bed, looking up at the ceiling as his mind went back to 3 years ago when he had met her. He had been beaten up by Kachan again, the boy having roughed him up and set several explosions to leave his clothes singed and his body covered in small burn marks. Instead of going home, Izuku just stayed laying where he had fallen under a tree, having no energy to stand up. Are you okay? The soft voice had forced him to open his eyes, staring at the little girl who was looking down at him. She was likewise roughed up, but she still found it in her to smile as she held her hand out. Let me help you. He had hesitantly taken her hand and stood up. He allowed her to fuss over him for a while before he got the courage to ask. Why did you help me? Do you know what Kachan will do when he finds out? I don't care, she had declared, taking a hold of his hand. Besides, quirkless have to stick together, right? Izuku's eyes widened before he gave her a shy smile. Right. I'm Miya Watanabe. Izuku Midoriya. It had been from then on that he and Miya had been inseparable, always walking with each other or sitting in class together when permitted. It was she that had gotten him to start seriously training for UA years before he could even apply. And it was thanks to her that he began to regain confidence that he thought he had never had before, standing up to Bakugo and his thugs any time he tried to bully himself or Miya. But now she was gone. Having gone through as tough a life as they did, it was bound to happen at some point, but Izuku couldn't get the memory out of his mind. Trigger warning for suicide. He had been grabbing their lunch. Miya was having a bad day, so Izuku had volunteered to go grab their trays, making sure that her favorites were on the trays before happily heading towards the stairs when another bully by the name of Yoroshi had held him up, attempting to take Izuku's food so he wouldn't have to pay for his own tray. As always, Izuku had fought back, almost starting a brawl until a sickening thud echoed through the air. It felt like an eternity, turning to look at the source of the noise, seeing the blood-stained pavement, the long brown hair fanning out around the girl like a halo, her body broken and unmoving. Izuku had dropped the tray, pushed past the bullies and ran to her side, pleading to some unknown god that it would be someone, anyone, than his best friend. No god answered that day, and the paramedics arrived on scene to Izuku screaming in loss, tears streaming down his cheeks as he cradled Miya's blood-stained body close to him. Izuku shook his head, trying to forget. Was it his fault? Should he have just stayed by her side and ignored lunch? Would she still be alive had he just stayed? His phone pinged and he slowly picked it up, his eyes watering at seeing an unanswered voicemail. He hadn't even thought of his phone since that day a week ago. Slowly he pressed the button. Asterisk asterisk hey Izuku. Asterisk 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 the voice of Miya made Izuku freeze as he stared at his phone. Asterisk asterisk by the time you hear this. Well, I won't be around. I know you don't check your phone often. In with what I have planned. I'm sorry for the pain I put you through, and I'm sorry I couldn't stick around to see you kick Bakugo's ass at the UA entrance exam next year. But I can't keep going. It's a chore just to wake up every day, and the venomous words and hate just gets worse every day. But don't dwell on me for too long, okay? You're stronger than I ever was, and I know you'll persevere and bounce back. I love you, Izu, don't forget that. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The voicemail ended, leaving Izuku in silence as tears slowly trailed down his cheeks. I am not strong. Damn it, I'm not strong, he sobbed, falling back on his bed and curling up, unmoving as his sobs drained his energy and he fell into a troubled sleep. Bakugo Katsuki waited at the entrance of the school, red eyes scanning the crowd coming in. Most were laughing and joking as they usually did. Not a thought wasted by them on what had happened a week ago. It had affected him more than he cared to admit. He had been a regular harasser of Deku and his brown-haired friend, He hadn't pulled punches and had said things to them that made him want to bow his head in shame now. But he couldn't show weakness, not now, not ever. As the minutes trickled by, the crowd thinned slowly, until Bakugo was alone in front of the building, eyes following a lone figure walking towards the school. Unlike Bakugo, this boy had no shame in allowing his head to bow. He didn't even look at Bakugo as he walked past him, making the blonde-haired boy shake slightly. "Izuku!" Bakugo called out, catching himself in time. The boy stopped, not turning around as Bakugo moved towards him. "Listen. He hesitated, sighing, I'm sorry, about what happened to Watanabe. That. Don't apologize." Izuku muttered, his voice sounding dead to Bakugo's ears, dead and exhausted. "Don't you dare apologize." "Look, Izuku, don't," Izuku snapped, turning to glare at Bakugo. "You don't get to apologize, you don't get to pretend like you cared this entire time, not after how you treated us. Not after." He stopped as tears threatened to spill. He angrily wiped them away. "You're not a friend," he muttered, "so there's no reason for you to even attempt to apologize. Just leave me alone." With that, Izuku walked away, leaving Bakugo alone in the hall. "Damn it, Deku," he whispered, finally looking down, "that's not it at all." The day passed slowly, and Izuku went through it like a zombie, barely reacting when the teachers would try to talk to him about what had happened, shrugging them off with a cold indifference, until he finally snapped at his homeroom teacher. "You didn't give a fuck about what was happening before. Why should you care now?" He had yelled at his teacher before stomping out of the room, the last bell of the day following him a few seconds later. He just wanted to go home. He didn't want to deal with any of this. Not alone. He had made it to the bridge before the inevitable happened. "Hey Deku." Yoroshi sneered from where he stood between Izuku and the bridge tunnel. "We didn't finish our game." Izuku didn't even glare at the bully. "I'm not in the mood." "Move," he muttered, pushing past the boy and his friends, who all sneered and laughed at him. "What? Not a big shot anymore? Huh?" Yoroshi laughed, pushing Deku and making him hit the ground hard. "No quirk, no life. And now no girlfriend. Such a shame. Maybe you should follow Watanabe and jump off a roof. It'd be a..." He didn't finish his sentence as Izuku's fist was driving into his stomach. "Shut up." Izuku screamed as he followed up with a biting uppercut that sent the larger boy sprawling. Two of his goons tried to grab Izuku, but he drove a knee into one's sternum, and brought his elbow down on the other's shoulder, dislocating it with a sickening crunch, before pouncing on Yoroshi, straddling the boy's waist as he balls up the front of his shirt and lifts the disoriented boy up and drives his other fist into the boy again and again, punctuating every punch with a screamed word. "Keep her name out of your mouth," he snarled, cocking his fist back for another punch, only for someone to grab his arm. He whirled around, expecting to see one of the goons, and instead was met with a tall man in a white shirt and green cargo pants. "Calm down there, young man." The number one hero boomed, any joviality he usually had not present. "This is no way to act." "All Might." Yoroshi whined thickly around the blood that was pouring out of his broken nose. "He attacked me." "After you provoked him," All Might proclaimed, hauling Izuku off the boy, then staring down at the bully in disappointment. "True, he took it too far, but you not only physically attacked him, but also mocked him with your careless words of suicide. Be happy I don't report this to the police. Now get to the hospital to get fixed up, all of you." Quickly the bullies scattered, only one helping up their friend before backing ass. All Might turned his attention to the boy beside him. The young man wasn't looking up at him, instead staring at the ground. "I'm sorry you had to hear that, young man. Are you alright?" "I am fine," he muttered, slowly turning and walking away. "Thanks, All Might." All Might watched the boy leave, a stab of pain going through his heart. "I know it isn't easy now, but one day it will get better." Izuku scoffed at that, making the pro tilt his head in confusion. "Life doesn't get better, not for Quirkless. Not for me." With that he continued walking, not looking back once. That night Izuku sat at his desk, staring at the picture of him and Mia. "It's painful," he whispered to the picture. "It's only been one day and I already want to end it all." He set the picture down and looked around his barren room. The only thing still up was a single All Might poster, forever grinning despite the way the boy below feels. Izuku quietly pulled his phone out and played the voicemail again, listening to his friend's voice. "I love you, Izu. Don't forget that." Izuku slowly looked over to his calendar, narrowing his eyes slightly as he stood and moved to the calendar, flipping forward 10 months to where Mia had written, "Izuku's big day. On the date of the UA entrance exam. I'm going to make you proud, Mia. At least one more time." That night 10 months later. Bakugo looked around as he walked onto the UA campus, eyes searching for that ever-familiar mop of green hair. 10 months had passed since the death of Miya Watanabe, and for the most part, things didn't change. The only thing that changed was that Yoroshi never went near Izuku again, and Izuku stopped fighting the few bullies who still went after him. Bakugo had been concerned and had brought his concerns to his mother, who simply told him to try and be there for Izuku. He's going through a hard time, and needs to know that he still has friends who care for him, she had said. Sadly, Bakugo couldn't summon the courage to tell her he hadn't been friends with him for years. But he still tried to be there for the boy, quietly sitting with him at lunch, inviting him to the arcade and even training, but he would always turn it down. Still, Bakugo persisted, hoping beyond hope that his old friend would come around. Watching as his friend slowly changed, becoming colder and more withdrawn as the months passed, his hair got longer, his muscles bigger and more defined. Sometimes he'd show up to school with bruises and other various injuries on him, and would brush off any attempt to find out what happened. Bakugo. The blonde boy turned around, staring at Izuku as the green-eyed boy glared at him. His hair was past his shoulders now, tied back in a loose ponytail, and wearing a black muscle shirt and blue jeans, hefting a long bag on his back. "You're blocking the entrance," he muttered before stepping around his rival and walking to the door. "I was doing that a lot, wasn't I?" Bakugo asked, making Izuku stop, trying to block the entrance. Izuku looked back at him, his gaze softening just a bit. "Don't worry about it," he said, before walking away. "I don't." Bakugo sighed, following the boy into the auditorium and taking a seat beside him. He sat through the explanation of the entrance exam and had even been able to finish the written portion before Izuku, waiting against the wall outside until the boy walked out. "You are not here to do something stupid, are you?" Bakugo couldn't resist asking as the boy walked by. He didn't stop, so Bakugo walked beside him. "If that was the plan, I wouldn't have waited 10 months. Izuku said as they reached the buses. This was the last chance they had to talk before the practical. After this they wouldn't see each other until school the next day. "Don't worry, I'm just gonna blow your score out of the water." Bakugo sneered at that for a second, then the sneer fell and he looked contemplative. "If anyone could, it would be you," he said simply. "Good luck, Izuku." With that, Bakugo began walking away. "Goodbye, Kachan." Bakugo froze, dread creeping into the pit of his stomach as he turned around once more to ask why Izuku would say goodbye, only to watch as the bus pulled away from the curb, taking the boy away and leaving Bakugo alone to feel fear for the first time in a while. Izuku looked at the large gates that would lead them into the battle center. With a small grunt, he set his bag down and opened it up. Tactical equipment filled the bag alongside guns. He had trained his body for 10 months to be the peak fitness of his age, training with weapons of all kinds until he could pick one up at random and handle it like a pro. He thought over his plans as he put a plate carrier on. "Don't worry about the other candidates. Take out as many bots as I can and set up a sniper position. Don't lose." It was a mantra he had been repeating in his head since the end of the written exam, one that he was going to follow to the letter. He barely paid attention to those around him as he put magazines into their pouches. Checking and clearing his .45, looking down the holographic sights with the barrel pointed away from everyone, then checking the foregrip and built-in suppressor before setting it down and picking up 2 Beretta M9 pistols. He had customized these himself after he had become proficient enough in shooting. The trigger system allowed for a 3-round burst and the 7-inch barrel had been replaced with a 9-inch barrel and compensators for better velocity and range. He twirled them in his hands before holsters them in the drop holsters he had strapped on prior. Then he pulled out the gun that he had saved up for 10 months. A Remington 700 tactical chassis .338 rifle, bolt action. It had cost him most of his money to buy it bareback. The customization ate up just a bit of his savings, with a variable zoom scope, hairline trigger, as well as a bipod stand and extended 8-round magazines. He was ready for this test. "Isn't it a bit dangerous to carry all of that hardware?" The voice was soft and feminine, and very curious. Izuku didn't bother to answer as he loaded the rifle and slung it over his shoulder before pulling a tactical Tonto blade out of the bag and sliding it into the polymer sheath that was mounted sideways on the back of his belt. "We're fighting robots, not people," Izuku said, grabbing the .45 and standing up, adjusting its sling on his right arm before putting a backpack on. "What about Ricochet?" she asked. "I'll be careful," he said simply, looking back at her. She was taller than Mia had been by about an inch, curvy with pink spots on her cheeks and friendly smile. Her brown eyes were gazing worriedly at the weapons, but she didn't seem to have any other argument against them. "Well, so long as you know how to use them, right?" she asked. "Right," he said, pulling a pair of goggles out of his pocket and putting them on. "Do they complement your quirk?" she questioned. "I only asked because I didn't know we could bring support equipment." She giggled sheepishly. "I don't have a quirk," Izuku stated, moving away from her as she gaped at him. He didn't want to know what her response would be to that. He'd never seen a positive one before and he'd rather not hear a negative one. "You there?" Izuku stopped and looked back as an angry-looking boy with glasses and dressed in what Izuku would refer to as a Speedo. Any weapon should be unloaded until the beginning of the test. If I wait until then I'd lose the edge, wouldn't I? Izuku asked. Don't worry, they're on safety. That's hardly the point. Then what is your point? Izuku asked dryly. Safeties can fail. What would you do if the gun went off? Cover my ears. He deadpanned, making several around chuckle. Actually, the gun in my hand is silenced, so nothing. How can you be so dismissive of the potential harm? The boy spluttered. Because I know what I'm doing. And start. The exclamation made Izuku instantly take off through the now open doors, barely listening as Present Mike explained how there were no warnings in real life. His submachine gun came up as 2 3-pointers rounded the corner. The low-caliber bullets pinging off its chest armor as he slid under their attacks, with almost inhumane speed the gun was pointed at the unprotected joints, turning the internal systems to slag as the bullets bounced between the armored hulls. He didn't turn around as they fell, instead he kept going, dropping the empty mag and reloading as he engaged a 1 and 2-pointer. This time he didn't fire until he had gotten close inside the 1-pointer's reach, jutting the barrel under its head and firing, separating the head before turning around and peppering the 2-pointer, its armor thinner than the 3's and easily being punctured by the gunfire. Another reload, another charge towards a 3-pointer lumbering inside of the building. Izuku worked meticulously as he destroyed it, and the subsequent robots inside the building. Well, this year's examinees are a lively bunch, aren't they? Principal Nezu commented as he watched the monitors, taking note of certain individuals. Don't you agree, Toshinori? Yeah. All Might agreed, currently in his skeletal form as he watched Bakugo fly through the air, explosions ripping through the air as he distracted lying attacked robots. Some use brute force to collect their points, Nezu said, having seen who Toshinori was staring at, while others use coolness under pressure to excel. He motioned to another monitor showing Iida running through the city, attacking any robot he came into contact with. Brute force or coolness under pressure. This kid here's got my 10. Snipe said, motioning to a monitor in the far right corner, depicting Izuku, now in a 5th-story window, rifle set up against the windowsill as he fired round after round, taking down several faux villains without any kind of hesitation or jerky movements. Haven't seen that kind of sharpshooting since my master. Who is he? Midnight asked, making Powerloader move the video feed to the main monitor where everyone could see as Nezu brought up Izuku's file. Midoriya, Izuku, Nezu said, making Toshinori perk up. 15 years old from Aldera Middle School, he was one of our more promising applicants. Promising is right. Cementos says, the precision in his movement speaks of hard work and training. Makes you wonder what his quirk is. Vlad King wonders out loud. He's quirkless. All the teachers stared at All Might in shock. The #1 pro hero was staring at the screen like he'd seen a ghost. Do you know him, Toshinori? Nezu asked, having been surprised the man had known that little fact. Know of him, yeah, he muttered, looking to Nezu. Remember the kid from Aldera I told you not to let apply? Yes, Yoroshi, Kaiba, you were very adamant. It's because I caught him bullying a quirkless kid, this kid. From getting bullied to being in the lead for points, Midnight mused, impressive. Actually, he had tackled Yoroshi after a certain insensitive comment, and had to pull him off the boy, Toshinori said. Hot temper. Ectoplasm intoned, could be dangerous. How did he get the weapons he's currently using? He's nowhere near the legal limit. If he sought out a trainer then he'd have access to a veritable arsenal, Snipe said, and if he filled out the proper paperwork, he'd have been able to exploit a legal loophole in regards to support equipment. But he doesn't have a quirk, Midnight pointed out. Wouldn't that disqualify him from support equipment? Technically, since he's listed his quirk as quirkless, he can have access to a wide variety of support equipment. Nezu says, it's a loophole that's rarely exploited by the quirkless part of society. We'll have to watch him closely, Toshinori muttered quietly to Nezu as the other teachers discussed Midoriya. Why do you say that? That Yoroshi boy who had been bullying him made reference to a suicide case. Toshinori whispered, the situation didn't feel right so I went to the school for further inquiry. He looked down. The girl who had killed herself was young Midoriya's girlfriend. Nezu frowned at that. Well then, we may need to inform Hound Dog to follow the boy. Make sure he doesn't do anything reckless. Izuku reloaded his rifle for the last time, aiming down the sights and scanning the area. Most of the robots had been dealt with already, and he knew he had more than enough points to pass. At this point he was just watching the other applicants. His gaze settled on the brown-haired girl who had spoken with him before the test. She seemed to be struggling now that the time was winding down. Not my concern, he muttered, moving his gaze away from her. Suddenly an explosion rippled through the air, shattering the windows around him and making him jump away from the window to avoid the glass. When he approached the window again he caught sight of the 0-pointer. That's certainly an obstacle, he grumbled, turning to head towards the stairs. Help, please. Izuku froze, head turning to stare out the window. He brought the rifle up to scan the ground. Swearing as he saw the same girl from before now trapped under rubble, he angrily slung his rifle and began walking to the stairs again, slinging the rifle onto his shoulder. It's not my problem, it's not my problem, he grumbled, slowly stopping. God fucking damn it. He snapped, running to the window, pulling a rope out and anchoring it on a nearby pipe. He then threw the rest of it out the window, using it to rappel down to the street fast. As soon as his boots hit the ground, he was running towards her. I am here, he said as he slid to a stop beside her, clearing rubble away as fast as he could. I think my ankle's broken, she whimpered, staring in fear as the zero-pointer bared down on them. You'll be fine, I'm gonna get you out of here, he said, glancing behind him. Don't look at that, look at me, he instructed, making her turn her fear-filled gaze onto her rescuer. I'm gonna lift this slab. When I do, I want you to pull your leg out, okay?
Oh, okay, she stuttered. 1, 2, 3, Izuku exclaimed, pushing with his legs and lifting the slab slightly. The girl quickly pulled her leg out.
I got it, she cried, gasping when Izuku suddenly hauled her up, fireman carrying her as he ran. She stared at him in astonishment. Here was a quirkless teenager doing everything just to save her. A grinding sound made her look up, her eyes widening as the zero-pointer crashed through a nearby building, sending debris straight at them. Watch out, she screamed as the rubble slammed into them. Without a thought, Izuku threw her forward, out of the worst of the debris, while his legs were pinned.
Fuck, Izuku screamed in pain, looking back at his legs. With a grunt of effort and adrenaline, he forced the rubble off, wincing as he saw blood already beginning to seep through the denim before looking over to where the girl was, blearily trying to sit up. He then looked to the zero-pointer, which was already coming after him.
He felt a strange calmness settle over him, the area around him quiet even as the girl screamed for him to move. He let his muscles relax as all of the stress, anger and pain bled out of him. He stared at the gigantic arm bearing down on him. And closed his eyes. Suddenly a hand was slapping him across the head, making his eyes shoot open as he began to float slightly. Come on, the girl shouted, doing her best to drag him with her, giving him a tear-filled smile. Don't look at it, just look at me. Her words shook Izuku from his funk and he began to drag himself alongside her, both sighing in relief as the bell rang and the zero-pointer stopped moving. Izuku collapsed back, staring up at the sky. Are you okay? She gasped out, clutching her stomach. I'm fine, thank you, he said softly. Don't mention it, she said weakly before throwing up. Izuku just continued to stare at the sky. I'm sorry, Mia, he thought as he passed out. The viewing room was silent, shocked and appalled at what they just witnessed. Did he just? Snipes started, trailing off as Midnight nodded. Had that been an actual combat scenario, she whispered, slowly sitting down. Kid's gonna need to speak with Hounddog if he's gonna be enrolled here, Vlad muttered. I might need to see him too after that, Mike mumbled. For now let's get them healed up, Nezu said solemnly. We can discuss this more later. The few weeks later, Izuku sat eating his dinner, his mother watching him worriedly. She had been worried about her son since his girlfriend had died. He had changed so much since that day and it broke her heart to see how closed off he had become. They hadn't had a good relationship for a while, no matter how hard she tried, but she at least knew that he would be okay. Now she wasn't so sure. Izuku honey, she said softly, making the boy look up. Is there anything you want to talk about? He shook his head. Nothing at all, he said quietly. Why? I'm worried about you, sweetie. You've been distant lately. He gave her a sad smile. I'm sorry. A lot of stuff on my mind. He stood up. I promise I'll try and do better. He walked out of the room, leaving his mother alone as she watched him leave. Maybe I need to call a therapist, she fretted. It can't be healthy to lock himself away like this. She stood and began walking to the door, hoping to go talk with Mitsuki about everything, only to stop just outside the door when she looked at their mailbox. And a golden sealed letter. Izuku, she exclaimed, running back inside with the letter in hand. It's Ua. Izuku opened his door, staring at the letter in surprise. Slowly he took the letter. Is it all right if I read it alone? He asked unsurely. Of course, dear, she said with a smile. Thanks, Mom, he said, stepping back into his room and closing the door. He looked down at the letter in his hand, slowly stepping over to his desk and opening the letter. Letting a holodisc clatter onto the old wood. Squaring his shoulders, he pressed the play button. I am here as a projection. Izuku smiled slightly. Leave it to All Might to somehow lift his spirits. You must be wondering why I'm here. Well, it's because I'll be teaching at UA this coming year. Now, on to the results. You scored 80 hero points, which puts you at first place overall. However, there is another aspect of the test that we keep secret, and that's the introduction of rescue points. And you were awarded 60 rescue points atop of your combat points, giving you a whopping 140 points. Izuku looked down, his smile turning sad. I did it, Mia, I did it. On to another matter. Izuku looked up, surprised to find that All Might was no longer smiling. Young Midoriya, he began quietly, I ran into you over 11 months ago, fighting a bully and proclaiming that life would never get better for a quirkless student such as yourself. I had grown worried at your words, and even more so upon finding out your reasoning. And after your actions at UA, I could not stand idly by any longer, and I am not the only one. He motioned to a screen that came to life, showing the girl who he had saved.
Excuse me, sir. She hesitantly called to present Mike, who turned to look at her. I wanted to talk to you about the boy who saved me, long green hair. A lot of guns, kind of a Rambo vibe. Well, I think he needs help.
Life may not get better, and it may hurt, but you must never forget that there are those out there who care for you. He didn't move after he got me to safety. He was just going to let the 0-pointer hit him. I can't just ignore that. I don't care if he hates me for it, so long as he's safe. Izuku felt himself shake as the video switched to one of Bakugo, bowing in front of Nezu, tears streaming down the boy's cheeks. I want to formally withdraw my application to UA. The words hit Izuku like a punch to the gut. Why would Bakugo give up his dream school? I can't in good conscience be accepted here after. It's all my fault. He's this way because of me. I didn't even think about what my words would do. I belittled him, cut him down, him and Watanabe. I can't. If him coming to UA without having to worry about me will help him, then I'll gladly step away. I'll go to Shiketsu. Or give up being a hero altogether. Please, he can't. I want atonement. All Might said softly, care for others. Speaking up even though you may be ridiculed and punished for your actions. Risking the anger of a newfound friend to make sure they'll be safe. These are the marks of true heroes. And true friends. Don't worry, little listener. Mike said gently as the girl wiped her eyes, we know and understand, and are already getting things together for him. I promise we'll keep an eye out for him. Your sacrifice is appreciated, but unneeded. Nezu said with a gentle smile, patting Bakugo on his shoulder, while I can't condone your actions, I can safely say that owning up to them are the first steps towards self-forgiveness. We will help young Midoriya, you just make sure you learn from your mistakes. Young Midoriya. All Might stated, I cannot lie, when I saw you, a young man who had fought against injustice with fire in his eyes, suddenly give up and accept what looked like an inevitable death. I couldn't help but feel sorrow and guilt. As teachers, we are supposed to take care of the children placed under our care, and it's plain to see that your former teachers did nothing of the sort. So I promise you here, young Midoriya, we will not fail you. Your friends will not fail you. Welcome, young Midoriya, to your hero academia.
The hologram cut out, leaving Izuku in the darkness as tears ran down his chin, dropping onto the desk.
Damn it, he whispered as he balled up his fists, damn it. Inko looked up as her son stepped out of his room, giving her a small smile. I got in. Oh Izuku, she gushed, throwing her arms around him, I'm so proud of you, honey. I know, Mom, thanks, he whispered, returning her hug. I'm gonna go for a walk, okay? Oh, okay, she said quietly as Izuku walked to the door, zipping up a brown leather jacket. I'm going to make a celebration dinner, so be back soon. Inko said with a smile. Izuku looked back with a sad smile. Thank you, Mom. I love you. I love you too, sweetie, she called to him, smiling to herself. Izuku walked through the quiet streets, hands in his pockets, his mind a jumbled mess. With a sigh he pulled a small pack of cigarettes out of his pocket, tapping one out and pulling it out with his lips, lighting it with a worn Zippo. He let smoke stream from his nose as he reached a familiar bridge. With a small chuckle he walked over to the edge and leaned against the railing, looking down at the water rush by. We'll be friends forever. Of course. I can't think of anyone else who would take the position. What if I asked you to be my girlfriend? Is this hypothetical, or should I just kiss you now? Izuku sighed. This bridge had been the start of their serious relationship. It was both a fond memory, and a painful one. What are you doing here, kid? Izuku looked back, not bothering to put the cigarette out as he stared at a skeletal-looking man, who was staring at Izuku in concern. Remembering, Izuku said softly, looking back at the water. The man nodded, still watching the boy cautiously. With a small, humorless chuckle, Izuku shook his head. I'm not gonna jump, Izuku said. Oh, that's a relief. The man chuckled nervously, I just assumed. It's fine. I think most everyone did, he muttered, running a frustrated hand through his hair. I guess they weren't wrong. But I'm tired. I put everything I had left just to get into UA. Not even because I wanted to get into my dream school, but because Mia left me a message before she died. She said she was sorry, that she wished she could see me beat Bakugo's score for the entrance exam, so I did what I could to get there. I'm not strong. Not like Mia said I was. It was a chore, even getting this far. Let me ask. The man started slowly, when you got here, was it alone? Of course. Izuku said hollowly, the only friend I have had, was Mia. Is there truly no one else? Izuku hesitated, I guess Bakugo. But he only started treating me like an actual human after Mia died. Death has a way of making people reevaluate their priorities, the man said. That doesn't make the last 14 years go away. No, I suppose it doesn't, he agreed, but doesn't the fact that he's trying to make amends say anything to you? I guess. Izuku looked down at his reflection, there was that girl too. I saved her at the entrance exam, and she talked to the teachers about me. She was worried about me. That's good, it means you have a potential friend. But why would she care? Izuku snapped, not looking back at the man, who took a step back. Why would she care if I was in a bad spot mentally? Why would she even tell the teachers? He whirled around, tears streaming down his cheeks. Why would she care about the quirkless freak? Son, he whispered softly, walking towards the boy, let me tell you something. Just because you don't know someone, doesn't make them a bad person. If this girl was at Ua, then that means she wants to be a hero. You saved her, dragged her out of a bad situation. Do you think she'd let anything go if she found out her savior was in trouble? And as for being quirkless, he put a hand on Izuku's shoulder, the world is a cruel and harsh place, especially in regards to quirkless, but that doesn't make you a freak, nor does it make you any less a hero than someone with a quirk. I should know, until I was 15 I was regarded as quirkless. He smiled sadly when Izuku looked up at him in shock. My quirk turned out to be some kind of stockpiling quirk. And it stockpiled all my strength until the entrance exam. But before that I thought I didn't have a quirk. He sighs, it's not entirely the same, but I remember the hurtful words, the sneers, the hits, but if I had given up, if I had let them win, I never would have been a hero. Izuku sniffled, wiping his eyes, I don't recognize you. He muttered, as a hero, I mean. He laughed, yeah, I wasn't very active for long. He said, letting go of Izuku's shoulder and pulling up his shirt showing him a horrible injury, knocked me out of the game pretty quickly. Sorry, don't worry about it my boy. He said with a laugh, now, I think it's late enough, why don't you head on home? Izuku nodded, yeah, you're right. And thanks. Izuku said, turning to walk away, stopping for a moment, oh, I'm Izuku Midoriya, Izuku said. Toshinori Yagi, he replied. Thank you Mr. Yagi, Izuku said, walking away. You're welcome, young Midoriya, he said quietly, turning away and leaving the bridge behind. A few weeks later. Bakugo blocked out the annoying four-eyed student berating him for having his feet up on one of the desks. He was too nervous to even care, he hadn't seen Izuku since the entrance exam, and while he knew the boy was still alive, he still couldn't help but worry. The door slid open and Bakugo looked over, relaxing ever so slightly as Izuku walked in, hair tied back as usual and smelling faintly of cigarettes. Greetings. My name is Tenyui Ida from Sume, Four Eyes started, walking towards Izuku with his hand outstretched. Yeah, I heard you from the hallway, Izuku said, shaking the boy's hand, Izuku Midoriya. Midoriya, I must apologize for my rude behavior in the entrance exam. The boy said, bowing to him, you were obviously the better student. I wouldn't go that far, Izuku said with a small smile, turning when the door opened again and a brown-haired girl with pink cheeks came in. You, she gasped nervously, I wasn't sure if I would see you. Izuku nodded, yeah. I saw what you did, he mumbled, making her shrink slightly, thank you. Wah, she squeaked in surprise, I thought you'd be mad. I was at first, he said with a shrug, but seriously, thanks. And don't mention it again please. Okay, Izuku finally looked to Bakugo, who instantly tensed when he did, Katsuki. He greeted, giving him the barest hints of a smile, nodding his head to the other boy. Bakugo returned the nod before their teacher came in and ordered them to get changed and meet him on the fields. Chapter 2 Black Dragon Shinigami. To answer your question, his hair is past his shoulders, it's still curly and unruly, but a little more manageable when he ties it back, which he does when he's in training or working. Izuku stood amongst his fellow students as he listened to Aizawa explain the nature of their test, looking decidedly bored as those around him began cheering about being able to use their quirks indiscriminately.
This is gonna be fun. A pink-skinned girl cheered alongside several others.
Fun huh? Aizawa asked, a dangerous edge creeping into his voice, making Izuku narrow his eyes at the man. You aren't here for fun, you're here to become heroes. He said, so now I'll add another little condition, the person who comes in last, will be expelled. But that isn't fair, Uraraka exclaimed, this is our first day. Fair? So you think floods, and other natural disasters are fair? Life isn't fair, and will chew you up and spit you out unless you find a way to go beyond, plus ultra. Well, I guess we don't have a lot to worry about, a yellow-haired boy said, jabbing a thumb at Izuku, after all, we got a quirkless kid here, he'll probably come last in everything. Izuku turned a hard glare onto the boy, making him wilt, you sure about that? Izuku asked him, running a critical eye over the class, and making most of them shift about uncomfortably, unless your quirk enhances your overall physical fitness, I'd say I have a good edge over at least half of you. He turned his glare back to the boy, including you, Sparky. Enough. Aizawa growled, Midoriya's right, just because you have a quirk, doesn't make you better than anyone else. I hope you can back your words up, Kaminari. It would be embarrassing to have said that, and then get beaten out by the quirkless kid. Now, everyone head to the track, long-distance running will be the first test to get you all loosened up. Izuku liked to think he did fairly good, finishing 8th overall. He couldn't compete with the likes of Iida or Asui whose quirks allowed them to run, or hop, faster than a car, nor could he compete with Yaoyorozu, who had pulled an entire motorcycle out of nowhere. But he had beaten out more than half of the class, including the Todoroki boy, who was currently glaring at him as he stretched out his legs and arms. Next was the 50-meter dash, which Izuku once again finished within the top 10, getting a 5.43, shattering the record for the quirkless record in the event. Careful, Izuku said to an out-of-breath Kaminari, who was breathing heavily after getting a 6.64, your ass is showing. After that, the rest of the tests had Izuku landing in the top 10, with only the ball toss landing him in the latter category. 300.2, Aizawa said, visibly impressed as he looked at Izuku, who was walking out of the ring, surprisingly far for a quirkless. I drink my milk, Izuku said simply, walking over to where Bakugo was, the explosive boy smirking smugly for his friend as the last few students went through the test. Alright, now that we're done, here are your scores, Aizawa said, posting them on an electronic board. Those of you who ranked lower, recognize where you need to improve and work on it. Kaminari winced at his placement, 16th overall, then looked up to where Izuku had placed, 9th overall. Oh man. Not too bad for the quirkless kid, huh? Izuku asks him, walking up. Well, can't argue with results. Kaminari sighs, giving Izuku an apologetic grin, holding his fist out, sorry bro, you were right. Don't forget it. Izuku said, bumping his fist with his own, giving him a small smile before looking at a boy with purple balls in his hair, who looked ready to cry as he stared at his last place spot. Oh, and no one's getting expelled. What, it was a logical deception. A ruse to make you all work harder, Aizawa said with a creepy smile. HMPH, right, Izuku muttered, making Aizawa look his way. Something you want to say, Midoriya? Aizawa asked, stalling Yaoyorozu's smug explanation of knowing about the ruse all along. Izuku met Aizawa's glare with his own. Will my statement end with me getting expelled? Izuku asked. Speak freely. Alright then, you're full of shit. The other teens gasped as Izuku squared his stance and let his arms fall to his side. You had every notion of expelling whoever was in last, and probably a few more if you decided that they weren't up to your expectations. An uneasy silence filled the air, until Yaoyorozu stepped forward. Don't be absurd. He was clearly trying to get us to use our full potential. No, I was planning on expelling the last place. Aizawa cut Yaoyorozu off, making her gape at him. I expelled an entire class last year because they treated this assessment like a farce. Half-assing their attempts and treating it like a game instead of what it actually was. He gave a grin, one different than his creepy one. The only reason I didn't expel anyone this time was because all of you exceeded my expectations. Had just one of you not given your all, then I would have expelled them, regardless of whether or not they were last place. I was fully prepared to expel all of you at the beginning of this. The fact that none of you were expelled is actually amazing to me. Usually I expel at least one person on the first day. He looks at Izuku. What gave me away? Izuku shifted slightly. It's what my master did on my first day. He threw out 5 others who wanted to learn under him, and only kept me despite the others' amazing scores. But that smile you gave us when talking about the logical deception was what really gave it away. Aizawa scoffed. Of course that's what gave me away. He said, turning around and walking away. Syllabus is back in the classroom. You're all excused for the rest of the day. Oh, and Midoriya, the principal would like to see you after class. Izuku watched the man walk away, then let out a sigh. Guess I better get changed, he muttered, going towards the changing room, leaving the rest of the class too stunned to move. I expected a lot worse, Kaminari whispered, as Mineta fell to his knees. I met Mr. Aizawa's expectations, he whispered quietly as the others began to talk to each other. I can't believe it, Yaoyorozu shouted. Why would Mr. Aizawa want to expel any of us? Like he said, if we didn't meet his expectations, Asui said, looking contemplative. I'm sure it's because he's met students with wondrous quirks but didn't have the right temperament to make it as a pro. Weird how Midoriya figured it out, huh? Kirishima asked with a grin, so manly. Hey Bakugo, you were in the same middle school, right? Was he like this too? The entire class looked at Bakugo, who was staring at the locker room where Midoriya had disappeared. He's always been analytical, Bakugo muttered, making everyone lean forward to hear, but he's never challenged a teacher so openly. He's changed over the last few weeks. Then we must be wary from here on out, Iida said, pushing his glasses up, and heed any caution that Midoriya gives. And give our ultimate best in everything we do in this school. It was the end of the day and Bakugo was alone. Leaning against a stone pillar at the train station, he had talked with Uraraka and Iida a bit before they left. Both had expressed their desire to talk with Midoriya, but Bakugo knew the reclusive boy wouldn't want to talk with either of them. He's used to being on his own. He had told them, give him a few days before you approach. The entire class heralded him as the only one who Izuku would talk or converse with, but he knew better. He knew the boy would only interact with him if he was forced to. He wasn't holding his breath for the boy to simply forget the last 11 years of their life. So he was surprised when the boy walked into the station and sat beside him, lighting a cigarette and inhaling a deep pull before crossing his arms, smoke spewing out of his nose and mouth as he slowly looked at the explosive quirks user. I don't forgive you, he said, making Bakugo tense slightly. I knew you wouldn't forgive so easily. Bakugo said back, hiding his true emotions behind an indifferent mask. Huh. So 10 months of ignoring you is easy, huh? The quirkless boy mused as he blew another smoke cloud. Bakugo said nothing as the boy leaned forward, resting his elbows upon his knees. I don't forgive you, he began. In fact, if someone were to ask, I hate you, but I also understand you. You're trying to reconcile with the past. And I can't fault you for that. In fact, I applaud you for it. But I can't forgive you. Bakugo sighed. Guess that's all I can ask you for, huh? He muttered, looking at his old friend, surprised to find a weary hopefulness in the boy's eyes. For now, he answered, standing up as he pulled from the cigarette once more, letting the filter fall from his hands, stamping it out as he put his hands in his pockets. I'm not one to trust blindly, Bakugo. You know that, but if you're gonna try and mend bridges, I guess I can too. He looked at the other boy and grinned. Maybe one day we can freely call each other friend. But for now, just be happy in knowing I see you as an ally, not an enemy. Bakugo stared at the boy for a bit, before chuckling. Don't expect me to pussyfoot around you for long, he said as the train pulled into the station. Hey. Wouldn't expect anything less, Bakugo. Izuku said, stepping into one of the carts. See you later, Kachan. Bakugo stepped into the other cart. See you, Deku, he mumbled as the door closed, not looking into the other cart as the train began to move. After spending dinner with his mother and telling her about his first day, Izuku retired into his room, sitting at his desk as he stared at the burning end of a cigarette, thinking over Principal Nezu's words. Because of the concerns brought up by your peers, as well as what the staff witnessed in your entrance exam, we think it best that any and all weapons you own be brought to UA for safekeeping. We would also like you to have regular sessions with Hound Dog, UA's own therapist. You can refuse both if you want, but we would like to think this is your first test as a future hero, knowing when to concede and accept help. Izuku sighed, slowly pulling his phone and dialing a number. It rang twice before a tired voice answered. Hello? Sensei? It's Midoriya, Izuku? Why the fuck are you calling me this late? You know I go to sleep at 9. I'm sorry, but I'm kind of in a bit of a bind. Explain, the voice demanded. I got into UA, but they're worried about my mental health. And what does that have to do with me? They want all of my weapons. You're fucking with me, fine. I left everything to you anyways. I'll have it all ready for transport by 5 tomorrow. I swear, you're more trouble than you're worth, boy. Yeah, I'll be there at 5:30 to get everything, thanks. Huh. Better be here this weekend to help me with work. Otherwise I'll be breaking my foot off in your ass. Understood. Izuku chuckled, ending the call as he looked out the window, wincing to himself as he thought of the sleep he'd be missing out on to pick up all the weapons. It's for the best. He muttered to himself, otherwise you get kicked out. Just suck it up. Izuku yawned as he knocked on the door of a non-decrepit cabin, situated a few miles away from the city limits of Mustafu. The door opened to reveal an older man with white hair and goatee. He was well muscled, with a few scars dotting his arms, with an eye patch covering his eye as he glared at Izuku. Hey, Watanabe-sensei, he greeted. Boy. He greeted, turning around and gesturing for the younger boy to follow, which he did, everything packed up. He grumbled, gesturing to 4 large cases. You should be able to transport everything themselves, unless you want my help. I'll get it. Izuku dismissed, taking a few moments to balance everything. Thank you for everything. Least I could do. He muttered, sitting down on an old recliner, staring at the picture of himself with a smiling Mia. who was happily hugging him. I failed her. I won't fail you. Huh. When I first approached you, you were close to just putting a round in my head and leaving it at that. Things change, kid. I'll be watching your progress. You slip up, I'll be visiting you, understand?
Yes, sir, Izuku said, heading out. Mom's expecting you this Sunday for dinner.
Woman's gonna be the death of me, he grumbled. Tell her I'll be there. Yes, sir. Izuku laughed. See you next weekend.
Goodbye, son. Don't disappoint me. I won't, sensei. Izuku sighed as he slowly made his way back into town, getting onto the train before it began to move. This is almost too much work. He grumbled as he sat down, his eyes closing slightly as the train began to move.
Dude, you good? Izuku mumbled, looking over to a semi-familiar sight. Oh, you're in my class, right? Joro? Juru, the girl corrected, looking the tired gunslinger over with a critical eye. You not get any sleep last night? She asked. Hey, had to get my weapons ready for Ua. He said, gesturing to the 4 cases at his side. It's a stipulation for me staying on.
Sounds tiring. She said, looking at her phone for a moment before looking at him. Why do you need to turn your weapons in?
Izuku hesitated, before sighing. My emotional state wasn't exactly stable back in the entrance exam. He muttered, the staff caught notice of it so. I get it. Juru muttered, sparing a look at him. Shouldn't be surprised, huh? Suicide rates for quirkless are high. Izuku felt anger course through him, but he reined it in. Yeah, guess you're right, he muttered. Juru stared at him for a while, before looking back at her phone, choosing not to comment on the subject as she plugged her earphone jacks into her phone. Soon they were at UA, Izuku heading straight for the main building while Juru loitered at the gates. It didn't take long for him to reach the agreed upon drop-off point. Funnily enough, he was early. Midoriya? It's 6 in the morning. Powerloader mumbled as he rubbed the sleep out of his eyes, staring at the quirkless student, who was doing his best to stay awake. You could have just let Principal Nezu come collect all of this. These are my weapons, Izuku said tiredly. I won't let anyone except myself hand them off.
Well, at least you're not flippant about your gear. Well, since you're here, why don't you choose which armaments to use for your hero foundational class? Better than letting us choose based on the scenario, you'll be able to choose based on preference.
Izuku was quick to choose his custom Berettas and a medium-ranged M4 with canted hybrid scope. He also grabbed a single-shot 40mm grenade launcher and a pair of batons. Ammo will be placed with your gear, Powerloader said, gathering everything up and placing Izuku's choices into a separate duffel bag. Training rounds. Rubber? Izuku asked in distaste. Powerloader laughed. No, these rounds pack a punch. They won't kill, but if you hit someone in the chest with this, then they won't be getting up for a bit. This will be placed with your uniform for the day. Thank you, sensei, Izuku said, giving him a bow before walking away. Try and get some sleep before classes start. Powerloader called to him, receiving a wave in answer. Izuku was absent-minded as he walked towards Class 1A, tapping his pack as he contemplated sneaking outside before classes started. Hand them over. Izuku froze and slowly looked back, eyes narrowing slightly at Mr. Aizawa, who had a hand extended towards the teen, red eyes held in a tired glare. I don't have all day, Aizawa said. With a grunt, Izuku pulled out his half-finished pack of cigarettes, placing it in the teacher's hand. I'm assuming no one knows about this habit, he asks, looking at the brand. Save those who've caught me, Izuku muttered. In the future you will leave these at home. If I catch you with them on campus again, it'll be suspension, understood? Transparently so, Izuku said. Aizawa put the pack into his pocket. Also, get something other than Lucky Strike. Only old men smoke those. He grumbled walking past Izuku, who snorted in derision. There goes my plans, he muttered, rubbing his eye before resigning himself to try and get an hour of uncomfortable sleep at his desk. The day passed with few incidents, mostly in the form of teachers and classmates waking him up as he dozed in his chair. He felt like they could have just let him sleep, seeing as they never had a problem when Aizawa would curl up on the floor in his sleeping bag. Izuku sighed as he leaned back in his chair, tuning out Kaminari and Mineta as they talked about the girls, his eyes slowly closing. He had a few minutes before class started, maybe he could rest his eyes. I am, coming through the door like a hero. All Might's exclamation made Izuku jump, uttering a quiet curse as he looked grumpily at the hero, giving the man a small smirk as he posed in front of them. Welcome, students, to the Foundational Heroes class. Here you will learn the basics needed to become a hero. The class began to chatter happily, some commenting on their disbelief that All Might was actually in front of them, while others were curious as to what they would be doing. The name of the game today, Battle Training. Izuku immediately looked to Bakugo, who had a confident grin on. Finally something you're good at, Izuku mumbled, making Bakugo half-heartedly glare at him. Of course, if we want to play the part, Then you have to look it as well, All Might proclaimed, hitting a button and deploying 20 metal briefcases, so get dressed, and meet me at training ground beta. Alright, I hope they made everything right, Kirishima exclaimed, grabbing his briefcase as the others followed suit. I'm gonna look totally cute. Mina gushed, flashing Izuku a grin as he walked past her to his own suit. Izuku gave a polite, if awkward, smile back. What's with the duffel? Shiro asked Izuku, being one of the first to notice a green duffel bag that had been placed with the suitcase. You'll see, Izuku said with a grin, slinging the briefcase and duffel over his shoulder as he walked out. That guy's creepy, Mineta mumbled under his breath. He's got that whole lone wolf alpha thing going for him, Kaminari said, I think it's cool. And he's easy on the eyes, Hagakure declared, eliciting a giggle from Mina. Enough dawdling, Iida shouted, robotically gesturing to them. Let's go so we may begin our training at once. Izuku slowly walked out the tunnel that led into training ground beta, handguns holstered at his side and the M4 and 40mm slung over his shoulder. Much like in the entrance exam, he wore a plate carrier with several ammo pouches attached. Only now underneath he had on a black long sleeve as well as knee and elbow pads. A half-skeleton mask covered his mouth and nose and a knitted cap covered his hair. His goggles had been upgraded and now allowed him several modes to aid him. Well, don't you look tactical, young Midoriya? All Might laughed as the boy walked over. Is this the work of the support department? Oh, are your own gear? My own gear for now. Izuku answered, pulling the cloth mask down. I entered my suit late and it won't be ready until next week at the earliest. Powerloader picked up my own gear from home about a week ago. Well then, I can't wait to see your finished costume. And look at the rest of you, you all look so cool. Izuku pulled his mask up and turned around, noting everyone's costumes. He's right. Izuku agreed as Uraraka and Iida approached him, Bakugo trailing behind. You look dangerous, Uraraka gushed, kind of like at the entrance exam. Thanks, your suit looks good too, Izuku said. Yeah, but I wish I had been more specific. She sighed, fidgeting slightly. It wasn't supposed to be this skin tight. Izuku diverted his eyes alongside Iida as their friend moved about. Yeah. Doesn't leave much to interpretation. Izuku coughed, sparing a glance at Bakugo who couldn't seem to look away. What's wrong, Bakugo? Izuku asked innocently, making the explosion user jolt and quickly avert his eyes as Uraraka turned around. Nothing, he said shortly. Alright then, now that we're all here, we can begin. I hope you're ready, you Zygotes. All Might laughed. Today, we will be conducting indoor battles. You will all be split into teams of 2 and go head to head. We're fighting each other, Mina asked in surprise. Why not robots? Uraraka inquired. Won't we hurt each other? Kaminari fretted. Doesn't my cape look wonderful? Aoyama purred. Let me finish, All Might called, looking slightly flustered as he pulled out a notebook. Now, the situation is this. Villains have smuggled a weapon of mass destruction into the city. The heroes are tasked with stopping them. The hero team wins if they capture the enemy or touch the bomb. The villains win by capturing the heroes or keeping the bomb out of their reach. What about basic training? Suyu asked. And will we be expelled if we lose? Uraraka questioned. No one will be expelled, and I believe that experience is the best training that can be given. Now, teams will be formed at random. You will be drawing lots. Excuse me, sensei. Iida began, hand raised, but wouldn't it be better to pair us with people whose quirks and skills are a good match to our own? You don't always get to choose your partner as a hero, Izuku said to Iida, especially when you're in the field.
Young Midoriya is correct. Many times you'll have to team up with whoever responds to the scene. Don't worry, young Iida. In the future we will be conducting battles with more prep time and fixed teams. For now it's imperative that you adapt to the situation before you. Now, WHO wants to go first.
In no time the lots were drawn and Izuku was placed on a team with Yaoyorozu, who looked decidedly uncomfortable at his side. Lucky. Uraraka muttered to Izuku as she stared warily at Mineta, who wasn't trying to hide his ogling of the girls. Mineta. Izuku called, making the boy look at him. Try anything perverted on Uraraka and the other girls and I shoot you, got it? Mineta looked ready to argue, but quickly lost his nerve upon seeing Izuku tap his holstered weapons, as if itching to pull them and let loose. Yeah, alright, he said with a quick shake of his head. Izuku looked at Uraraka. Send him to space if he tries anything, could use the target practice. Will do. Uraraka exclaimed happily. How barbaric, Yaoyorozu muttered. You telling me you just let his creeping slide? Izuku asked her, making her shake his head. Of course not, but threatening bodily injury is unbecoming of future heroes. Really? I think it's the name of the game, Izuku said. Alright, All Might proclaimed. Now that the teams are created, let's see WHO will be facing off first. Team A versus Team I. Team I, you're the villains, go ahead and enter the building and begin your preparations. Team A, best begin strategizing. The rest of you, follow me. All Might passed Izuku and handed him a small backpack, the training ammo for today. He says quietly, be careful, these rounds can still injure, there's communicators and capture tape in there as well. Yes sir. Izuku said, taking the backpack and opening it up, pulling several magazines out and loading his pouches. What's your quirk? He asked Yaoyorozu as he tossed her one of the communicators as well as a packet of capture tape. Creation. She answered, putting the communicator in her ear while Izuku hooked him up to his own communication rig. I can create anything inorganic so long as I know its chemical makeup. That's useful. Izuku said, loading his M4 and staring down the sights. I have 210 rounds for the M4, 150 for both of my handguns, and 6 40mm canisters, 2 explosive, 2 smoke, and 2. I think it's knockout gas. He looked at her. I suggest that I climb one of these other buildings and take up Overwatch. This M4 is kitted out for medium range, but it should still do fine across the street. I believe that it would be wise for us to stick together. Yaoyorozu said carefully, if I were to be ambushed in the halls where there are no windows, then I'll be at a disadvantage. Izuku nodded, fair, he conceded as he stood up, I'll turn thermal on when we enter the building, should help us pick out Hagakure. If they stay on the same floor then we could just pop some gas in there and knock them out. A sound plan. Yaoyorozu nodded, pardon my curiosity, but are those live rounds? They're not rubber. Izuku said, pulling a magazine out and tossing it to her, some kind of compact powder, reminds me of sim rounds, except without the plastic and detergent.
I was worried they had given you live ammunition. Yaoyorozu said softly.
Even if they did, I wouldn't be able to fire it. He motioned to his guns. Drop-in conversion kits keep them from firing live ammo unless they're taken out, and unlike civilian models, I can't take it out on my own. That sets me at ease a bit, she mumbled, handing the magazine back. I'll take points when they give the word, Izuku said. You know basic hand signals, yes? I do. Good, non-verbal communication unless the jig is up, we go quiet, we go tactical. Wait for my signal to enter, copy? Agreed. Heroes, the time starts now, you have 15 minutes to find the bomb. Stay frosty. Izuku says as he hits a button on his glasses, the dark shading turning a muted green color as Izuku opens the door quietly, gun up and ready as he sweeps the first floor. He reaches the stairs and motions for her to enter. You think he has military training? Dude, he's the same age as us. I know, but he's way too smooth with those guns.
Bakugo growled under his breath as he listened to Kaminari and Kirishima talk to each other about Izuku. Hey, maybe Bakugo knows.
I don't. Bakugo said before Kaminari could turn to ask him. Midoriya's training is a secret, even his mom wouldn't tell. All I do know is the hardware he has was given to him by his sensei.
That guy must have had a full armory. Sato muttered. I mean, look how the little guy is kitted out.
Check out his movement as well. Juru said, he's going fast but quiet, you wouldn't hear him until it's too late. Same with Hagakure. Mina chirped, looking at the villain's feed where Hagakure had abandoned her shoes and gloves. She's like a shadow. Is she wearing anything other than those gloves and shoes? Uraraka wondered out loud. Doesn't look like it. Sue said. Izuku looked around the corner as they entered the fourth floor, pausing for a moment as he signaled Yaoyorozu to stop, slowly signaling. One person. 6 meters ahead. No weapons. Yaoyorozu translated the signal to herself as Midoriya brought his weapon to his shoulder, signaling once again, move on my shot. Izuku slowly exhaled before squeezing the trigger. The bullet fired off and hit Hagakure in the chest, sending the girl sprawling back. Move in. Izuku said quietly, stepping onto the floor fully as he approached the stairs. Get her restrained. On it. Yaoyorozu said, moving forward, only to be pushed back by Izuku as Ojiro came spinning into the room, his tail slamming into Izuku's rifle and sending it clattering away down the stairs. Shit. Izuku growled, rolling back and pulling his pistols. Hagakure, are you alright? Ojiro shouted, kneeling beside her as his tail took the brunt of Izuku's retaliatory shots.
Fine, she croaked out as she forced herself to take a breath of air. That hurt you, jerk. She snapped at Izuku as the boy continued to fire.
The jig is up. Izuku said, voice clear and confident as he kept his guns trained on them. Surrender now, villains. He sounds serious. Hagakure whispered to Ojiro. Go protect the bomb. He whispered back before vaulting into the air and heading straight for Izuku and Yaoyorozu. Yaoyorozu go. Izuku commanded, firing once again as Yaoyorozu dodged around Izuku and took off up the stairs after the invisible Hagakure. Just me and you, Tails. Izuku growled as he rolled to the side, reloading as Ojiro faced him. Those bullets sting, Ojiro said as he got into a defensive stance, but my tail is pure muscle, I can barely feel them. You're out of your depth. You think so? Izuku asked. Well then, maybe I should just give up then, he said with a carefree shrug, making Ojiro relax slightly, but, then again, I still have about 120 rounds for these pistols, and some batons to fall back on. He said, so let's give me about that much time to decide for sure. Ojiro moved as Izuku began firing again, each round slamming into the other boy's tail. The few that hit his chest had the martial artist falling back. Ojiro's eyes widened as a few bullets exploded on the wall next to his head. Watch it, Midoriya. You could take an eye out with that. Then surrender. Izuku ordered, coldly grunting as Ojiro kicked him back, dodging away as Izuku raised his guns again and continued firing. Wait for the reload, Ojiro thought to himself, rushing forward as Midoriya dropped the magazines. Now, he snarled, slamming his tail into Midoriya's chest, sending the gunslinger flying back into the wall. Nice try. But skill wins out every time, he said, pulling the captured tape out and focusing on finding the end.
I agree, Izuku muttered, suddenly lunging forward and jabbing something into Ojiro's chest, blue arcs of electricity running over the boy's chest as his muscles contracted and sent him to the ground. Izuku stood over him, his batons out and crackling with electricity. Good thing I have that in spades.
Yaoyorozu was thankful that she had time to create the thermal goggles she now wore, though she was also understandably flustered as the thermals gave her an uninterrupted view of Hagakure. Take them off. Take them off. Take them off. The other girl whined as she threw punch after punch at Yaoyorozu. It's embarrassing. Do you realize how impractical it is to fight without a uniform? Yaoyorozu demanded, cheeks flushed as she fought the girl. Honestly. They're still creating my costume using some hair samples. It's not my fault they're slow. Hagakure snapped. The sounds of gunfire stopped, making Yaoyorozu pause. Ha. Ojiro kicked Midoriya's butt. Hagakure cheered, just you wait until he comes back up here. Then you'll lose. Yaoyorozu took a cautionary step back, getting the stairs in her line of sight as she created a metal staff to fight with. Suddenly a black blur shot out from the stairwell, slamming into Hagakure's already bruised chest and unleashing blue arcs of electricity. Hagakure screamed as her muscles spasmed and she fell to the ground. Get the captured tape around her, Izuku commanded as he climbed the stairs, looking a little worse for wear as he ran towards the bomb, a shaky Ojiro vainly trying to drag himself after the boy. On it, Yaoyorozu said, wrapping the white tape around Hagakure's arm as Izuku touched the bomb. Hero team wins, All Might proclaimed as Yaoyorozu. Izuku sighed as he fell to one knee. Jesus, that was close, he muttered, yanking his goggles off. He almost got me when I ran out of ammo. I'm assuming you were saved by these, Yaoyorozu said, holding up one of his batons. Yeah, Izuku said, standing and taking the baton back as he approached Ojiro, holding a hand out. You almost had me. Hey. Didn't expect the change-up. Ojiro panted out, accepting Izuku's hand and standing up. Is Hagakure okay? Fine, she mumbled from where she lay. My chest hurts. Sim rounds, gotta love him. Izuku drawled, putting his goggles back on and setting them back to the original setting. I don't. It hurt really, really bad. She whined, and how did you know I was there? You have goggles too. Yeah? Izuku said in confusion, before crying out in pain as Hagakure began hitting him. Take them off. Take them off. Take them off. Ouch, stop. Hey, what's the fucking problem? Izuku snapped, jumping away from her, hand resting on his reloaded gun in warning. She the thermals kind of shows all of her, Yaoyorozu explained, looking flustered while Ojiro blushed deeply. I turned the settings back to normal as soon as I put them back on, Izuku said firmly. But why you saw, she stuttered out in embarrassment while Izuku turned away. I saw your head, Izuku said bluntly, aimed down about a foot from there. I did my best not to peek, I promise. See, now that's manly, Ojiro muttered, especially since most of the other guys would have freely taken a peek. Whatever, let's get to the others, Izuku said, walking down the steps as the others followed, Yaoyorozu quickening her stride to match his. You did good today. Yaoyorozu praised him, and your reflexes were fast. Thanks, he said, stopping for a moment to pick up his M4 and check it over. Good job holding off Hagakure, must not have been easy. I created some thermal goggles to help, she said, motioning to the pair in her hands, not as streamlined as yours, but they worked. Explains why she wasn't happy. Izuku muttered, looking over his shoulder as they continued walking. Hey Hagakure, Ever shot a 40mm grenade launcher at a pair of thermal goggles? No, she said in confusion. Want to? Yes. Izuku looked back to Yaoyorozu, if you're okay with it. Of course, I was going to throw them away anyways, she said with a smile as they left the building. She tossed them down the street, as Izuku motioned Hagakure forward, pulling the grenade launcher out. It's a single use, he said as he opened the tube and pulled one of the explosive rounds out. He loaded it and handed it over. Enjoy. Stupid goggles. Take this, Hagakure shouted, pulling the trigger and watching in wonder as the round hit just a few inches off. The explosion shattered a few windows as Izuku whistled. Nice, he said, taking the launcher back. Thanks, it was fun, Hagakure cheered. Anytime. He looked at Ojiro. Wanna try? No thanks. Ojiro said with a chuckle, I'll stick with my martial arts. Suit yourself. Izuku said with a shrug, then turned to Yaoyorozu. I'm fine, she said pleasantly. Izuku nodded then looked back to the goggles. The straps had disintegrated completely, and the lenses shattered beyond repair. I think it's had enough anyways, he said, slinging the launcher as they continued on. Excellent work, students. All Might praised the four as they walked in. All four of you have earned passing grades, but I do believe Midoriya here is our MVP. Can anyone guess why? He never lost sight of the objective, Juru said. He took both of the villains down, Uraraka guessed. He wasted no energy and was efficient in combat, Iida called out. All good answers, but the main reason is that he treated this scenario like a real-life battle. Young Ojiro was a close second but broke character several times, like when Midoriya shot too close to the head. I was taken by surprise, Ojiro said sheepishly while Midoriya just shrugged. Practice like you're in a live fire situation and you make less mistakes, Izuku said, shivering as he remembered his sensei's sniper scenarios. That dude's so manly, Kirishima said, a manly tear glistening in his eye. Alright then, time for the next matchup. Team D, you are the villains, enter the building and prepare. Team B, strategize. Wonder who's gonna win this next one? Uraraka wondered out loud. Hey Midoriya, who do you think will win? Kirishima asked. Izuku looked at the screen, where Bakugo was angrily talking something over with Iida while Todoroki simply leaned against the wall, making no effort to talk to Shoji. From first glance you'd assume Todoroki and Shoji, neither look worried and are apparently ready for the fight, while Bakugo and Iida are simply arguing. He gave a dry chuckle. Anyone who knows Bakugo though, knows he's going to try and win this no matter what. Begin. I'll go look for them. Bakugo snapped, heading towards the exit of the room. You protect the bomb. I still think I'd be better off scouting, Iida began. You don't do good on corners and this building is full of them. So just, Bakugo stopped as the temperature suddenly dropped. Rev your engines now. Get them hot. But it was too late. Before Iida could even tense, their feet were frozen to the ground. Shit. Bakugo swore, can you get out? It's going to take a minute to even begin to warm up my engines. Iida muttered while Bakugo grumbled. Start heating up then, he said, awkwardly bending over and putting his hands on his boots, steam pouring off the point of contact. If I'm out before you then I'll help. No, if you can get out then go stop Todoroki. If he gets on this floor before we're both free then we'll be locked down again. Bakugo grunted as his feet broke through the remaining thin ice, wobbling slightly on the ice. Alright, better hurry up, Four Eyes. With that Bakugo blasted down the stairs. Who knew he could focus heat like that? Shiro said, impressed. Todoroki's gonna hear him coming, Juru pointed out. He's not melting the ice to let Shoji in though, Mina said. And it was true, Todoroki was looking towards the stairs, eyes narrowed but made no attempt to melt the ice. Is he going to try and win the fight on his own? Kaminari asked. That's crazy. Agreed, Yaoyorozu said, looking to Midoriya. Even if he's strong, the name of the game is team battles. Then count Bakugo out. Izuku snorted, he doesn't know the meaning of cooperation. I got you now, you icy hot bastard. Bakugo roared as he rounded the corner, demolishing the hasty ice wall Todoroki had erected and sending the surprised boy flying back. You think some shitty ice is gonna stop me? Everything freezes eventually, Todoroki said, sending spikes of ice at Bakugo, who easily broke through them with more explosions, wincing as pain ran up his forearms. With the chill in the air and the use of his quirk to initially break out of the ice, he was running low on sweat. He still had the reserves in his grenades but knew that wouldn't last long. Another spike of ice was destroyed, this time with a powerful kick, making Todoroki narrow his eyes. Running out of juice? He asked as the temperature of the room began to decrease. I'm assuming it has something to do with sweat. Bakugo gritted his teeth to keep himself from shivering. What gives you that idea? He growled, leveling one of his gauntlets at the boy. They were nowhere near full to capacity, but would still give a good kick. The pin came out. Stop this. Iida let out a sigh of relief as he finally broke through the ice. All right now He stopped as the building shook. Bakugo, are you all right? He called over the radio. Receiving only static. Bakugo, I'm heading to your location. Don't. Bakugo gritted out, making Iida stop. Protect the weapon. Iida hesitated, then sighed. All right, but be careful. Yeah, whatever, nerd. Bakugo snapped into the radio, looking at the destruction in front of him. His eyes narrowed as he watched Todoroki slowly walk out, legs shaking slightly. You had enough icy hot? Todoroki let out a breath of cold air. Not even close, he said, sending another wave of ice at him. Bakugo began dodging the attacks, punching through a strand of ice that had trapped his foot before sending an explosion Todoroki's way. The boy responded with a thick dome of ice that absorbed the attack easily. You just gonna hide? Bakugo roared, hands sparking as the exertion of the fight made him sweat. Come on and face me. This is crazy, Kirishima muttered. These two are on a whole other level. They have very powerful quirks. Yaoyorozu agreed. Too bad one of them is only using half of his quirk. Izuku muttered. Yeah, Midori is right, Shiro shouted. Wasn't he supposed to be half hot half cold? Why isn't he using his fire? Mina wondered. Who knows, but every quirk has a limit, doesn't it? Izuku said, watching as Bakugo and Todoroki exchanged blows, eyes narrowing as he watched Bakugo hesitate between attacks, brief flashes of pain showing through the boy's face confirming Izuku's suspicion. This is a stalemate in favor of the villains, unless Todoroki decides to use his fire. Bakugo was breathing heavily, glaring at Todoroki. His arms were aching and his teeth shattering as the boy before him fell to his knees, frost covering his arm and face. You had enough? Bakugo shivered out. I can't give up, Todoroki muttered, forcing himself to his feet. What are you trying to prove? Bakugo snarled, stomping towards him. He grabbed him by the front of his shirt and hauled him up, fist cocked back. Time is up. Villain team wins. All Might proclaimed. Instantly Bakugo dropped Todoroki, staggering back slightly. You're gonna get someone killed one day, Bakugo said softly, looking down at the other boy as he began to heat the room up, the ice around him melting instantly, his skin slowly regaining its color. Fighting like that. Shoji suddenly appeared out from the stairs, shaking slightly from trying to climb the icy stairs before they thawed. Todoroki, are you alright? Shoji asked, slowly walking towards his teammate as Bakugo moves to talk with Iida. I tried to get up here and help but it was my fault, Todoroki said tiredly. I'm sorry. Don't worry about it, come on, Shoji said, helping Todoroki to his feet. Bakugo, are you alright? Iida asked worriedly, checking over his teammate.
I'm fine. Are you sure? You're stiff. I said I'm fine, damn it. Bakugo snapped. Let's just get back to the others.
Soon the four were back in the camera room. Bakugo didn't listen to All Might as the man began to tell them what had gone wrong. Mostly in Todoroki's attempt to simply freeze his opponent. Bakugo simply sat down beside Izuku, who was watching. Congratulations, Izuku said quietly, you got MVP for persevering in the exercise. Who cares? Bakugo muttered, stupid moron almost killed himself. Izuku said nothing, just continued to watch as the other students went through the trial until it was all done. Izuku looked down at Bakugo, still sitting against the wall, hands shaking and twitching in pain. With a sigh Izuku turned towards him and held a hand out. Come on, he said, let's get you home. I don't need your help, Bakugo muttered, but took his hand anyways, standing up and staggering a bit. Bakugo. Uraraka called, running over. Are you okay? She asked worriedly. I'm fine, Bakugo began. He's overused his quirk. Izuku said, can you help him to recovery, girl? I need to return my weapons. I don't need, of course, Uraraka said, ignoring Bakugo's spluttered complaints as he was dragged away. Come on, let's get you seen. But I don't, he winced as Uraraka grabbed his forearm. Oh, sorry, I bet that hurt, she said sympathetically, carefully taking his arm again and massaging his arm. Is that better? Bakugo felt himself relax slightly. Yeah, it kinda does, he mumbled, blushing slightly. Izuku watched them leave, chuckling slightly to himself. Shouldn't you be getting dressed? Yaoyorozu asked, making Izuku look over at the girl. I need to go to the support department before school ends, Izuku says, gesturing to his weapons. Make sure everything's put up and talk with the person who's making my new suit. Sounds like a busy afternoon. Izuku shrugged. See you later, Yaoyorozu, he said, walking out, the girl giving him a small wave before moving to follow the rest back to the locker rooms. Izuku walked all the way back to the main campus in his gear, getting many strange looks as he moved. He ignored all of them until he was at the support department, politely knocking on the door. A second later an explosion had him flying across the hall. Whoops. A cackling laugh exclaimed from the black smoke pouring out of the room. I guess that's the wrong wire. Hey, are you alive? Crack. The rapport of a sim round being fired was followed by the pained grunt of someone who was unprepared for said sim round. Izuku staggered through the smoke, his gun at the ready as he advanced upon the perceived threat, stopping when he came upon a pink-haired girl, struggling to breath. They work, she croaked out as she rolled from side to side, taking a huge gulp of air as she sat up, grinning at Izuku despite the tears stinging her eyes. They work perfectly. Stay down, Izuku ordered, keeping his rifle trained on her chest. Midoriya. Weapons down, Powerloader shouted as he came running over. It's alright, Hatsume just had a malfunction. It happens from time to time, she said with a shrug, standing and grinning at Izuku, but I'm glad those rounds worked well. Tell me, are they better or worse than mainline sims? Izuku stared at her, then hesitantly lowered the gun. Better, he admitted. Conversion kit is also more streamlined, not as bulky. That's the first thing I changed, she said proudly. Nezu just wanted us to use the generic on the market conversion kits, but they were so clunky, and were prone to misalignments. Tell me, did you feel the difference in performance? I did, he confirmed. It was almost like shooting live rounds. It was a little tricky getting the right amount of gunpowder without accidentally making them lethal. Glad you two were getting along. Powerloader interrupted dryly, making the two teens look at him. I'm guessing you're here about your uniform. Yes sir, Izuku said, standing at attention, and to hand my guns back in. Go ahead and put the guns up first and I'll have Hatsume show you the suit. Think you're gonna like it.